The story begins with the introduction of a prophecy that claims a child who was born with the same color hair as the first saintess would become the crowned princess, bringing peace and balance to the kingdom, due to the historical figure's great legacy, as she was a pink-haired woman renowned for healing thousands of people, and even stopping the waging war in just a single word. We then meet our main protagonist, who meets the prophecy's criteria, Sia Pescintria, who is nicknamed Sia. In the current era, pink is a themed color of the temples in their lands because of the pink-haired first saintess. Thus, when the prophecy about the future pink-haired crown princess was told, everyone instantly understood the meaning behind it. However, that did not stop skepticism and disbelief that a pink-haired child would ever be born. But as everyone thought it was impossible for such a thing to occur, it was then Sia was born with pink hair, which was in contrast to her parents' blonde hair. At this, everyone in the kingdom believed her to be the child of the oracle, looking forward to her being the next saintess and crown princess. This led her to be pressured by many outsiders, as she was eventually taken away from her adoring family to the royal palace at only 3 years old. Initially, Sia was sad and lonely as any other child would be without their parents, but she soon met the crown prince, who welcomed her with open arms and a warm smile. Growing up together, they formed a strong bond, and Sia found motivation in her training to become the crown princess as well as a suitable ruler, even though she never wanted such a life. As the years go by and she has her official coming-of-age ceremony, where she becomes the crown princess officially, Sia finds happiness staying by the prince's side. But then, it is revealed that everything has changed overnight when a new prophecy arrives that changes the details of the previous one. Despite being in a state of panic, Sia believes that the prince will not abandon her just because the prophecy has changed and rushes off to find him. However, once she does, the prince immediately tells her that he wishes to cancel their engagement, without a hint of emotion in either his voice or face. Sia is left shocked at such a statement, but the prince simply tells her that he feels sorry for her. Devastated by his reaction and suggestion, she questions to herself if she truly can no longer hold on to him with her love anymore, reminiscing about their first meeting where he comforts her with his warmth. She initially thinks he can still persuade them because of their bond, but when she is met with the prince's stone-cold expression and he tells her that there is no more prophecy between them, she holds her tongue. Deciding to keep her remaining pride instead of begging or trying to persuade him, Sia agrees to his wish in a cool tone and turns to leave. As she exits the room, it is also revealed that this turn of events is happening 1 month before their intended wedding. The next day, Sia wakes up by herself in her room as she no longer has any maids attending to her. She sits by her vanity desk and looks at the crown that was meant for her, tearing up as she realizes that she will no longer need it. However, the quietness of her surroundings without the servants is soon disrupted when there is a commotion heard from outside of her room. Suddenly, her room doors open up wide, and a young woman with pink-haired twin-tails makes her entrance boisterously. She smirks mischievously and greets Sia in a haughty manner, an act that the latter is not impressed by. Ignoring Sia's obvious disdain and discomfort toward her presence, the young woman introduces herself as Via Lrtella, nicknamed Via, the daughter of Marquis Lrtella and the new owner of the prophecy. At this, Sia gives her the benefit of the doubt as she explains that she doesn't mind meeting her, but she cannot just enter her room without her permission beforehand. Unfortunately, Via simply ignores Sia's words as her attention is redirected to something else she spots in the room. She walks towards Sia's vanity and picks up the crown that the latter was just tearing up over previously, telling her she is there to check out the room since it will be hers soon. Then she casually puts the crown on herself, spinning around and showing how it suits her perfectly. This only irks Sia even more, as she feels bitter that after all her previous accomplishments, she had to hand her title over to such an immature child. One of the guards finally arrives at the scene, telling Via that she is not allowed there. But Via simply rebuts that she will be a princess soon. At this, Sia smiles in disbelief and finally makes a move against Via's insolence. She tells her that even though she is the new prophesized version, Via still displayed rudeness towards Sia, as well as trespass on her private property, and wonders what kind of punishment to bestow upon her. But Via is not bothered, as she repeats that she will soon become the new crown princess anyway. However, Sia is not finished. She proceeds to remind Via that she is still the current prince's fiancé, since they have not officially canceled their engagement yet, and thus still the crown princess at the moment. As the current owner of the castle, Via is still considered beneath her and a subject of the emperor, then further implies that Via thinks she is superior to the emperor for acting the way she has been. Finally panicked, Via retorts to Sia's claim and drops the crown on the floor. So Sia orders the guards to take her away. Via tries to get out of the situation, still claiming that she has every right to be in the room, but she can only continue to whine and shout as she is escorted out by the guards. Once Via is gone, Sia sits down on her sofa and sighs deeply, disappointed that the prince has already replaced her with such an immature person. As she puts her face in her hands, a grim expression appears on her face as she starts thinking about how he will pay for the high price of their breakup. Later, Sia is walking along the castle corridors when she overhears a conversation between two noble ladies. They gossip about how Sia has been abandoned by God and what her future plans will be once she is no longer engaged to the crowned prince. Sia does not take these words spoken behind her back kindly and immediately calls out the pair of ladies. Facing her wrath, the ladies are trembling in fear as they apologize profusely over their words and swear to never say such things again. Sia eggs them on sarcastically to repeat what they said about her to her face anyway, until they are interrupted by Sia's former handmaiden. As she lays her eyes on Sia again since the change of the prophecy, she does not greet her with a kind face, but instead a disgusted expression filled with disdain. This shocks Sia since the handmaiden essentially raised her and watched her grow up since she was a young child. Feeling betrayed that even she had turned her back on her, Sia decides to let the ladies go and simply leaves the scene without any more confrontation. Reaching her destination at the dining room, she laments how that is the only time when she can see the crowned prince, since they are no longer family. Once she enters and they sit together in silence, having their tea time, Sia starts to reminisce about the happy memories she has of them growing up together. Then, she decides to bring up a political topic in their conversation, but the prince is upset at the lack of reaction she has toward the change of the prophecy. She coolly replies that she can do nothing about it, even if she cries about it, and thinks about how her lack of outward reaction is the least she can do to preserve her remaining pride. He asks her if that is all she wanted to say when they were there, but she replies that she does question one thing, which is when she was able to leave the castle. This visibly upsets the prince even more, and he asks her if she truly wants to leave, but she simply sips her tea in silence in response. At this, he gets up from the table and walks away in a huff, telling her that she can do as she pleases. Later that night, Sia is reviewing some old documents filled with her own handwritten notes that she initially gathered over the years for the prince's sake. Originally, she was planning to give them to the prince once he becomes emperor, but now deems all her efforts were in vain. A flashback ensues, and the story jumps back to 8 years ago when a young Sia is practicing hard with her sword on the training grounds. Tired but resilient, she continues on until the prince arrives at the scene and calls out to her. He tells her that she does not need to force herself to train so hard, but she responds it is because the emperor himself said the royal family members must be able to protect themselves. To this, the prince states that he is a good knight who will be able to protect both himself and her, so she does not ever need to learn since they are going to be partners for life. Scoffing at such a memory in the present, Sia proceeds to burn the written documents and throws the ashes into the wind outside. It is then a messenger bird arrives at her window, and she guesses correctly that it is from her father. Once she arrives reading the letter, she summons a man to her room, who is revealed to be a faithful servant of the Pescintria family, who was planted in the royal palace to take care of Sia. His name is Asha, and Sia fondly calls him her little dagger. Asha approaches and greets Sia with due formalities, then asks if she has anything to request of him to do. She tells him that she needs him to spread a rumor, specifically about the new prophesized person, Via. 3 generations ago, it was said that the Marquis back then would kidnap children and drink their blood in order to retain her own youth and beauty. This was leaked to the public, and the scandal affected their family so terribly that even 3 generations later, in the present day, the current Marquis still has no power or money despite his status. Since Via is the daughter of the current Marquis, Sia decides to use his old scandal as the foundation for the new rumor, where Via is repeating history and doing the same as her ancestors. Asha questions her actions, but she simply hands him the letter that was sent to her from her father, which reveals that Via was the one who first started rumors about Sia being wasteful and manipulative. Because of this, Sia is unwilling to back down and let Via go. Receiving her answer, Asha obediently accepts her order for her sake. Before he leaves, he deliberately sheds a few fake tears as a show to the other servants. This was to make it look like he was being scolded by Sia to the other servants, and thus it will throw suspicion off their late-night meeting. Once he is gone, Sia burns the letter her father sent her as well to get rid of the evidence, vowing that she will also make Via pay the high price for messing with her, the lady of the Pescintria family. Meanwhile, elsewhere in an unknown location, a white-haired young man is observing the landscape before him when he is called out by someone as priest. The subordinate relays the message that Sia is embroiled in a scandal, to which the priest responds that cannot happen because she must be completely his. But then the subordinate also tells him that Via is in the scandal as well, to which the priest pauses and laughs out loud. He realizes it is Sia's trick and gets more excited to meet her in person, then confirms that their upcoming scheduled meetings with Sia will continue as planned. Back at the palace, Sia is unpacking her luggage and decides that the only thing she has to leave behind are the things she received because of her title as the crown princess. The only thing she reaches for is the engagement ring given to her by the crown prince. Then she calls a servant to deliver it to him for her. A young woman Sia does not recognize appears to attend to her, but she brushes the suspicion aside for the time being to pass the ring to her, telling her to give it back to the prince. As the servant leaves, Sia opens up her closet in order to throw out all the clothes she bought with the prince. As she is arranging them out on her bed, the servant returns still with the ring and tells her that the prince wants Sia to give the ring back to him in person. Briefly remembering the first time he gave the ring to her as children, she begrudgingly agrees to do it and takes it back. Seeing the complicated expression on Sia's face, the new servants ask her if she is okay, as she is worried for her. Sia senses there is something more the servant wants to say, and encourages her to do so, to which the servant reveals that there have been terrible rumors about Via, and she worries about the future position of the crown princess. At this, Sia promptly asks the servant for her name, and she replies she is Azel Portuba. The former realizes that she is the daughter of Viscount Portuba, then decides that she will be able to use Azel in some way as a pawn in her plans. Later that day, Sia pays a visit to the prince's study to return the ring. She sits down on the sofa, waiting for the prince to complete his work when she notices the flowers she arranged are displayed on the coffee table in front of her. As she wonders why the prince did not throw them away yet, since some buds have already withered, the prince approaches her from behind and questions if she is there to return the ring to him. Sia tells him that he is correct, then takes out the ring box and hands it to him. Speechless that she actually went through with it, he solemnly accepts the ring back. Since the exchange is done, Sia gets up to leave when she actually knocks over the flower vase and it falls to the floor, shattering glass everywhere. This causes her to receive a bloody cut on her ankle, and the prince rushes to her side worriedly and tells her not to move. Seeing that they are in such close proximity to each other, Sia tells the prince it is inappropriate since they are no longer engaged. At this, he clenches his teeth and turns away, agreeing with her. Once he does, Sia tries to pardon herself and leave when the prince stops her, stating that she looks busy even though she does not have anything else to do with her current position. Sia rebuts that the prince himself is busy with his duties, and that it still takes her time to pack her luggage. This catches the prince off guard, as he did not expect her to be packing luggage, and asks her what she meant. She replies it is because she is leaving soon, and tries to excuse herself once again before the prince grabs onto her arm, holding her back. He tells her that he has one last thing to ask her, and it's that he needs her help with the documents that he has been working on. However, he suddenly stops himself and tells her to forget what he just said, letting her go. As she leaves his study without another word, she finds herself unable to leave as soon as she thought she could because of the prince's behavior toward her. When she returns, she summons Azel to come and bandage the cut she received previously from the vase. As Azel does so, she tries to advise Sia to go to the doctor instead, since she is bleeding quite a lot, but Sia dismisses the suggestions as she claims to want to know more about Azel instead. Simply happy at hearing Sia's words, Azel agrees to the former's request for details about the rumor she heard about Via, as she claims to not know much about them. After a while of Azel relaying back the rumor about Via kidnapping slum children and using their blood, Sia is able to confirm that her plan worked due to Asha's hard work. However, this leads Azel to misunderstand that Sia is worried about such a person becoming the future crown princess, and reassures her that many people also do not approve of Via. Sia fakes ignorance and agrees with her concerns, but then promptly redirects to the topic of Azel herself. She asks if the crown prince's assistant named Rubella is from the Portuba family, who Azel confirms is her brother happily, and explains that they get along well. All while this is happening, Sia is planning something sinister as she gathers more intel about the people around the crown prince. Later that night, Sia is visited by a messenger bird again, and she assumes it is another letter from her father. When she takes the letter, she realizes that it may be even more urgent because it was written in a way that the contents are invisible unless a secret method is used on it to reveal the words. As she reads it, a grim expression befalls on her face as she states something is quite the trick. She clenches the letter tightly once she is done, then states that all she needs to use is a cup of tea, with a malicious smile. The report in the letter is revealed in a flashback, where Via stands outside a crowd of people and directly addresses the rumors about her family. She claims that none of them are true, and they should trust the words that come directly from her mouth instead, referring to them as her people. Back at the palace, Asha is by Sia's side as she is updated on the situation, and she takes offense at the Empire as well as for herself. This is because, to her, Via is already acting as if she is the crown princess, using the Empire's name in vain. As she reads further into the letter, it seems that her father has a plan for her, but it is ultimately up to her to decide whether to go through with it or not. She smiles proudly, stating that she cannot return to the current situation after all, since she has the pride of the Pescintria. As she thinks of excuses to delay her departure, she hatches a plan to find out more about the Lrtella family. The next day, there is a heavy downpour outside, and the butler tells Sia that there has been a landslide caused by the previous night's storm. She asks what he means by it, and he explains that the only road that leads back to Duke Pescintria's estate from the palace has been blocked due to the landslide, thus she must postpone her departure. But this is revealed to be all part of her plan as she feigns ignorance when in reality she requested her father to block the previous road to prevent her from leaving. Not only that, but she has also broken her door latch open deliberately as well, so that others can eavesdrop on her conversation with the butler that she has already rehearsed beforehand. She puts the plan into action as she agrees with the butler to stay till the road clears up, but pretends that she is concerned about Via since her room is supposed to be the latter's once she leaves. She also manipulates the conversation subtly so that it goes in a direction where the butler gets a bad impression of Via, which she succeeds at. As Sia strokes the fire further by claiming that Via is a simple noble who wastes all her money on jewels and dresses, the butler gets madder for the sake of the kingdom and then ends up showing his gratitude towards Sia instead. He swears his loyalty to her instead, as well as his family's, then leaves to sort out the delay in the schedule. Later that day, Sia sits in her room in triumph as she plots her next move to take down Via with more rumors about how the latter spends all the temple money on her own selfish desires. As she envisions a chessboard before her, she smirks about how V will get out of trouble this time. A while later, Sia is reading a report on the current situation and is satisfied to see the rumors have spread well, which helps get her out of the spotlight as well. But Sia is not done with her yet, as she swears to have Via fall out of favor with the temple in one way or another. Thinking about the temple, she also remembers that there is apparently a new priest who has a difficult personality from the previous ones, who are usually uninterested in engaging in worldly matters. However, she notices that such a person has not stepped in to help Via with the rumors at all, and the latter also has not done anything to stop them. This makes Sia suspicious of the priest, as she wonders what kind of person he truly is, and if he will be a threat to her plans of revenge. Meanwhile, back at the temple, the mysterious new priest is sparring with someone when he is informed by a subordinate that Sia is looking for him. This intrigues him, but he refrains from doing anything in retaliation as he claims it is not the right time yet, telling the subordinate to keep an eye on what kind of information about him is spread. Back at the palace, Sia is walking around the palace gardens with Azel when she suddenly turns to her, giving her shawl to her as she says the weather is chillier that day. Azel is touched by Sia's act of kindness, but of course, it is revealed that Sia is just doing this to bait her, since she finds Azel's connections useful. While spending more time together, Sia also tells Azel not to call her Your Highness anymore, since she is no longer the crown princess. She tells her to simply call her Princess, which Azel adheres to. A few minutes later, they are sitting together in the new glass house in the garden and having tea together. Sia explains to her that only certain families are allowed to enter, including Azel's, and proceeds to suggest she bring her brother next time. At this, Azel opens up that she is very close with her brother since she is currently living in his house, despite being a handmaiden to a royal. Usually, handmaidens have their own quarters to live in at the palace, but she ended up living with him instead. Sia asks her if she loves her brother that much, and Azel agrees, which Sia sees as an opening to get Azel to spill some important intel that might have been exchanged between the Portuba siblings. Acting sympathetic and in admiration of Azel, Sia praises her close bond with her brother and inquires curiously what the pair usually talk about, comparing her slightly awkward relationship with her own brother, since they barely have time to meet. This prompts Azel to open up and talk about her time with Rubella in excitement, mentioning that they even talk about their work. Being the topic that Sia wanted to gather information on, she asks what kind of work Azel's brother is doing, and she tells her that he seems to currently be on a tough mission. As Sia probes further, Azel also reveals that her brother is unhappy with the new prophecy as well, and that there are plans within the imperial palace that they may take over the part of the temple that was responsible for the change. This intrigues Sia as she is aware that the relationship between the temple and the empire has never been good, and plots to investigate the matter further later. Receiving the information she wanted, Sia decides to lighten the mood again so that Azel does not get suspicious or stressed. A while later, after Azel has left the glass house, Sia is sitting by herself having tea as she looks back on what just happened after she manipulated Azel into keeping what they just discussed a secret. Suddenly, the crown prince enters the glass house with his usual stoic demeanor, accompanied by Via, who is there to act as his arm candy. As usual, Via greets Sia in a very casual but haughty manner, to which Sia takes offense and reminds her to be polite. She redirects the subject to the prince, asking if he is alright with her lack of manners in his presence, but he simply stays quiet. So Sia ends up telling Via herself to behave properly before her, but Via rebuts that they are basically on the same level now that Sia is no longer the crowned princess. At this, Sia is appalled that Via would think so because even then, the former is still backed by her father the Duke, who holds significant power in the empire. She coldly tells Via to watch her mouth or she will have her dragged away in humiliation like the last time in her room. However, Via is not intimidated and threatens that Sia will regret her actions if she goes any further, telling her to stop acting in that way toward her, with a malicious grin. It now resumes the moment when Sia is looking over in the prince's direction. Noticing that he is not intervening at all and simply staying silent as he watches them fight, Sia questions her own patience with the situation. Since Sia did not give a comeback to Via in time, the latter then turns her attention back to the prince and asks him if they should leave in a cutesy manner. The prince holds a grim expression when she does so, but still stays silent, while Sia wonders why Via decided to retreat for the time being instead of continuing their fight. As she ponders about it, her ears perk up at the prince rejecting Via's companionship as he tells her to leave without him. Though the latter is taken aback and upset at his order, she can do nothing but oblige, though not before giving Sia the stink eye subtly before she does. Once Via is gone, Sia is left alone with the prince and they sit down together at the table. An awkward silence envelopes them. So when Sia finally breaks the ice and asks him if he has anything to tell her, he leans in close to her with a cold look and states that he hears she has been up to some interesting things as he grabs onto her hand. At this, Sia assumes he is talking about the rumors she started about Via, but before she can say anything, he proceeds to tell her to stop what she is doing. Without any confirmation of her initial assumptions, she acts dumb and asks him what exactly he wants her to stop doing. The prince is not accepting her act though, and he simply tells her that he is warning her and not requesting her nicely. Leaning in close to her once again, he holds onto her face and tells her that it is all because he just wants the best for her. In response, Sia simply slaps his hand away from her face with an angry but determined expression. As he is taken aback by her action, she tells him that he can warn her as many times as he wants. She remembers back to when they were young again, thinking about how much she used to like him as a child because of how warmly he treated her by calling out her name gently and holding her hands. She then continues her short speech about those who mess with the Pescintria family will not be left alone simply to live on in peace. Once she is done, she gets up to leave, but the prince calls out to her to stop her from him doing so. At this, she tells him to stop calling her by her name, since she is no longer his companion Sia, but instead the princess of Pescintria. As Sia is leaving, she senses that someone is following her, waiting for her to go to an isolated area. She plays along with the stalker's plan and starts making her way to an area near the stables, a place she knows is actually safe because Asha works there as a quiet stable boy. When she is there, Sia finally confronts her follower, who turns out to be Via. The latter reveals that she has something to say to her, and immediately brings up the bad rumors that have been surrounding her as of late. Then, she tells Sia that she knows she is the one who started such rumors. Of course, Sia immediately denies the accusations in a calm manner, but Via still does not let her go. This prompts the former to bring out a vial of mysterious substance on her person, then pours a drop onto the ground, which shows it is acid to Via. Showcasing that she has such an item on herself, Sia tells Via that she should have splashed it on her stalker immediately in defense if she had not known that it was Via. This shocks Via, so Sia also takes this chance to snarkily advise Via to send her a letter asking for her audience instead of simply following her sneakily. However, Via still does not back off as she spitefully tells Sia to not make her resort to petty measures, as she deliberately puts up her hand to her face to fully display a new ring on her finger. Sia instantly recognizes it as the engagement ring she just returned to the prince the other day, and Via adds insult to injury by explaining to Sia that she received it from the prince himself and is aware that it was Sia's former engagement ring. This act of Via does not deter Sia either, as she recollects her composure and sneers at how Via enjoys the hand-me-down things used by Sia initially. She questions if Via is truly happy with such an old, used thing, to which Via defends that it is simply a temporary ring she is wearing till the prince buys her a new ring. Hearing this, Sia states that it was useless to bring attention to such a ring then. Finally accepting defeat, Via clenches her fist tightly and bitterly leaves when she realizes that Sia will not back down to her just yet. Once she is gone, Sia calls out to Asha to emerge from the shadows of the stable. He assumes that she only wanted him to stand by and keep watch over the exchange, which is why he stayed hidden the entire time, to which she confirms he is right as she was afraid of losing her temper and killing Via straight away. Once they settle the incident, Asha tells her that he has something to deliver to her as well and hands her a wax-sealed envelope. She opens it up and reads it on the spot, revealing that the war is over and that the military troops will be returning home in the current week. At this, she briefly explains how the Seppi kingdom sent a plea for help to the empire 3 years prior, swearing to become a vessel of the empire if they sent their imperial army to help them in a war they are involved in. Back then, the empire agreed to do so, and thus, Sia's older brother left as he was part of the military reinforcements sent to aid the Seppi kingdom in their battles. Hearing how they won the war with barely any damage, Sia expects a certain young man, who she simply refers to as that kid, will be coming back soon as well. This turn of events satisfies Sia as she finds that she is able to take advantage of the upcoming situation. A while later in her room, Sia groggily wakes up, thinking about how the soldiers will be coming the next day. She is about to continue sleeping when she hears a suspicious noise outside her room and sits up. When she does, she suddenly notices that her bed is surrounded by pink flowers, ones that she investigates are non-poisonous due to her eyes of studying poisonous items for her own safety. That is when someone enters the room, inquiring that she is finally awake. This is when the story introduces the person Sia was referring to previously who was coming back from the war. It is Alfredo Venetia, the second prince of the empire and bastard son to the emperor, who seems to be particularly fond of Sia as he greets her with a huge bouquet of flowers. As he gives her the bouquet, she accepts them silently and asks how he is back earlier than everyone else from the military troops. He simply replies that it's because he wanted to visit her as soon as possible, especially after he heard about the changes in the prophecy. Sia reassures Alfredo that she is alright and double-checks that he is currently already 16 years old after being away at war for 3 years. At this, he tells her that she is correct and that she can no longer treat him as a mere child as he suddenly hugs her tightly, asking if she still remembers the true him. To his statement, Sia thinks back to the past when a younger and more naive Alfredo would often cling to her and follow her around, even though she did not actively look after him. Proud that he managed to return safely despite being sabotaged by the Empress before, Sia praises him for his hard work and bravery, to which Alfredo tells her that he has been lonely for the past 3 years as he only thought about her. Mentioning how Sia granted her permission to let him enter her room on his 13th birthday, he assumes it is still in effect, and that is how he snuck in the flowers around her beforehand. He double-checks if she is alright with the entrance, and she confirms it to be so, as long as the others did not notice him doing so to avoid more rumors. As Sia gets up from the bed, Alfredo questions if she really did call off the engagement to the crown prince, which she confirms to be true. Though he initially shows concern over the fact, he subtly smiles to himself and then approaches her, kissing her hand and requesting to eat breakfast together. However, Sia immediately rejects this request, telling him to go greet the emperor and empress first before anything else to show respect. Sheepishly, he obliges, but she promises to eat a meal with him at a later time. Once he has left the room, he is still standing outside her bedroom door as he smirks to himself. Once the day dawns, Sia sees that the servants are busy hustling and bustling around the palace outside, so she deduces that they are preparing some kind of welcome home feast for the knights who are coming back. With this in mind, Sia thinks about how satisfied she will feel seeing the expressions on the crown princes and Via's faces if she was invited and showed up to the event. Later, Azel passes on a letter meant for Sia to her and Sia reads it, finding out that her brother has returned to her father's estate. She tells Azel that she has to get ready for the event and inquires if Azel is coming as well. At this, the latter confirms it to be true as she is going with her brother, and so Sia decides to take advantage of the fact. Feigning that she is upset over something, this goes according to plan when Azel immediately comforts her and asks her what's wrong. Once Azel has taken the bait, Sia tells her how Via has been trying to trample all over her ever since she stopped being the crown princess. Later that night, Sia is thinking about how to fully defeat Via when Asha comes back with information that she sent to him to investigate and retrieve. He relays to her that Via Lrtella has borrowed money from the trade fair as there is a son there who is in love with Via. But Sia is aware that this is not the true story and asks Asha for the truth behind why they were given permission to borrow money in the first place. He reveals that the Marquis actually discovered a weakness of the son and used it to blackmail him. And such a weakness is that the son actually killed his mother. With his father being unaware of the fact, Sia realizes that this is why the son agreed to lend money, as it is better than the risk of going to prison. However, Asha is not done yet with his report, as she tells her that there is something even more important that he found out, which is that the Marquis has been in contact with the temple. Sia initially thinks nothing of it since Via is the new child of the prophecy, but he reveals that they have been in contact since before the prophecy was even announced to be changed, shocking her to her core. Shocked that they were interacting during the time when the original prophecy was in place, they suspect that the current high priest has a secret relationship with Via and is secretly manipulating things behind the scene. Thinking it strange since priests are not allowed to have romantic lovers, Sia tries to figure out what she can do with such intel. She asks Asha what is Via's biggest weakness, and he says that it is beauty, such as beautiful luxury items or beautiful-looking servants. At this, she asks if Asha can try seducing her to their benefit, and he agrees to do so if Sia is able to set up a chance for them to meet. Sia then briefly narrates some intimate details about Asha's life, explaining that he initially grew up in a guild full of assassins, but he somehow ended up abandoned on the side of the road. That was when Duke Pescintria picked him up and took him under his wing. Once Asha was fully healed, he swore his loyalty to the Pescintria family and would do anything for them. The story then jumps into another flashback of when Sia was still a young girl in the palace. She is on the way back to her room at night, excited to plan for her day off the next morning, when she comes across a room that still has light in it. Curious, she goes to check on it and finds Asha wielding a sword as he casually wipes off some of the blood splattered onto him, which does not help much since his whole body was essentially covered in it. A hand suddenly reaches out and grabs hold of Sia's leg. The owner of it is struggling on the ground as he begs her to save him, but Asha immediately stomps the hand away from Sia, telling her to return to her room. Though she is taken aback and trembling at the scene, she still tries to demand an explanation from Asha when her brother also arrives at the scene. When Sia turns to look at him, he is also shocked to see her there as he has splattered blood all over himself as well. While she begs for an explanation from her brother too, he simply passes his gloves onto Asha and tells him to clean up while he deals with Sia. Once he does so, he simply picks Sia up and brings her back to her room himself, even with her verbal protests. As he tucks her into bed, he asks her what she is doing there, but she tells him to explain the situation to her first. He avoids the subject and simply pats her head, telling her kids need to sleep as the thing she saw is not important to her. Then he kisses her goodnight and leaves. With this memory, Sia recounts how the servants were not surprised by her brother's appearance when he left after tucking her into bed. It was then she realized that she is the only one who is living in ignorance blissfully. It was only later that she found out her brother and Asha were killing off assassins who were there to attack and kill her that night instead. As she remembers how many people suffered because of her title as a child, she suddenly states aloud how funny of a coincidence it is that she is thinking about the first assassination attempt on her life when she is experiencing another such thing at the moment as well. It is then revealed that a group of assassins has stopped her in her tracks, ready to commit their mission, and Sia asks if they were sent by Via. Telling them that she's been aware the entire time that they have been following her, she states that it's now the time to handle the situation. And that is when Asha instantly appears out of the blue to defend and protect her against the assassins. As Sia commands Asha to deal with them swiftly, he pardons himself and tells her to close her eyes, as he eliminates them for her. However, she does not do so and instead watches the entire thing as Asha fights them off skillfully. She even gives him a heads up on one of them sneaking up on him, and soon enough, he successfully deals with them. Once he is finished, he kneels before her and apologizes for letting her witness such a sight. But she tells him he does not need to be apologetic and gives him her handkerchief to wipe the blood off his face. At first, he refuses out of respect for her, but when she insists kindly, he accepts it humbly and uses it when they hear a groan of pain from behind them. One of the assassins is still alive, so Asha steps on his hand to silence them and asks Sia if they should bring him back to the Duke's palace and use him as proof that Via tried to assassinate her. But Sia tells him to keep the attempt a secret instead, because she already knows that Via is responsible for it. Thinking that it is too dangerous to face off with Via again face to face without knowing the full extent of the relationship she has with the temple high priest, Sia tells Asha to hand the assassins over to her father discreetly, as they still may be of use in the future. That night, the messenger bird comes by again with a new letter, and Sia takes pity on it for having to fly to and from the Duke's estate in the palace so many times. As she reads the letter how it is quite difficult to find the person who hired the assassins from just the guild, Alfredo drops by again. With his cheerful attitude, Alfredo says that he is there to give her something and brings out a beautiful big white gown. Sia instantly recognizes it, and Alfredo checks with her that it initially belonged to her, which she confirms is true. She reveals that it was supposed to be the wedding dress she would wear as the crown princess, then questions why he would bring such a thing to her. Alfredo responds that some marquis's daughter wanted to steal it and wonders aloud on earth who would dare to steal things from Sia. At this, she knowingly replies it is Via, the new child of the prophecy, and asks where did he even find it. He recounts that it was a pure coincidence he came across it since he was in town, looking for a gift for Sia. When he was walking around, he saw a woman with pink hair and followed her out of curiosity all the way to the bar, though he reassures her that he did not mistake her for Sia at all. Invested, Sia asks him to continue and reveals that he heard Sia's name being said by Via when she was looking at the dress. At that point, Alfredo had to hold himself back from anger, but he managed to sneak away with the dress when Via was not looking. Looking at the gown, Sia admits that there is no use for it anymore. Then she suddenly tells Alfredo how there is no color more outstanding than white in a solemn voice. As she says that, she reminisces another memory of the past in which the crown prince repeats the exact saying to her. The pair are looking at the wedding dress in awe as he tells her how anything that is covered in pure white instantly becomes the most gorgeous thing in his eyes, thus why he believes that there is no color more outstanding than white. As he states how it is the perfect dress, he pats Sia gently on her head and tells her that it will suit her well. Back in the present, Sia holds a grim expression and confesses to Alfredo that the wedding dress feels more like a reward to her, a reward that she receives from spending all her life training to become the perfect crown princess. But now she does not need it anymore since she is the lady of the Pescintria family, no longer a backup crown princess. As Sia suggests to Alfredo that he bring it back for Via since she does not need it, he comes closer to her and asks sadly why she holds such a complicated expression. She questions what it means by his words, and he explains that she has a look that one only holds when they are unhappy with something. Unaware that she has made such an expression that affected Alfredo, she reaches her hand out to his face to comfort him, and he happily accepts her physical touch of affection. Eventually, he makes a move and kisses the hand on his face, but Sia does not react to it and simply tells him that she is busy with other affairs and will call for him later when she has time. Once he is gone, Sia goes back to reading the many invitation letters sent to her, as now she has many vying suitors since she is no longer engaged to the prince. She also finds out that many nobles are looking forward to seeing her attend the welcome back feast for the knights. Though some claim that she would likely not make an appearance due to the crown prince and Via attending the event together, most nobles want to be entertained by the possible drama that may unfold if she does attend. Knowing this, Sia decides to go along with their expectations and do as they wish, plotting to not let the event go on smoothly and peacefully at all. It is then Azel shows up at her room since Sia summoned her earlier, and the latter tells Azel of her upcoming plans. At this, Azel shows her support enthusiastically as usual, and promises that Via will not be able to harm her at all. Next, the butler comes in to hand her more letters from available suitors inviting her to become their partner at the event, when she tells him to simply throw them all away. Instead, she requests him to mail out a letter she wrote instead, ignoring the rest of the invitations, and telling him that she has already decided on who her companion will be for the event. Later on in the night, Sia is finally done preparing her plans and tells Via to expect more from her at the party, because the rumor she spread previously was simply child's play. The story time skips a little to the day of the party, as the servants are busy preparing for the event and the various noble attendees have been going on diets to look their best. Sia does not need to do any of that, as she claims that the main character only needs to prepare imposingly on the day of. She makes her way to an isolated area near the stables, where she is aware that her plan with Asha is in action at the moment. As she hides behind the stables, she watches as Asha kneels before Via, pleading for her forgiveness. He tells her that he had no idea such a priceless item was owned by her, but she claims that she is not angry with him, and instead simply asks why he has her brooch.
Moving on with the story, Sia hides behind a cottage in the palace's garden, and overhears Via's conversation with Asha as she demands to know how he got his hands on her brooch. Sia recalls finding it on the ground after Via stormed out of the forest after their little showdown in the glass garden and decided to make good use of it. Keeping that in mind, she later offered it to Asha and asked him to use it to his advantage against Via when he would make her fall for him. He then began showing it off to the servants of the palace, which fueled a rumor about a stolen brooch being kept by a lowly servant and reached Via. Right now, she's interrogating Asha, who kneels before her and with his innocent-looking countenance convinces her to believe that he merely found it on the ground somewhere. Being weak in the face of beauty, she easily falls for the lie and caresses Asha a face, instantly believing in him and forgiving him. Witnessing this, Sia triumphantly walks away. At night, in the Pescintria dukedom, Sia's letter reaches her brawny brother Rias, who has returned from war after 3 years of being away. As soon as he reads her letter, despite the ball being a day away, he decides to head to the imperial capital at once and worries for her. On the morning of the imperial ball, at the imperial church, the great pope gets all dressed up to conduct his planned meeting with Sia without her knowledge. Meanwhile, she gets dressed for the ball in her highest spirits. Just as a maid puts her shoes on for her, the butler informs her that the crown prince and the new crown princess are possibly making their way to the ball and wonders when she would like to leave. She reveals that she'll only leave at dusk, once the sun has set and the moon is visible. Later, when her maid questions her about the peculiar timing, Sia reveals that it's the time at which her most awaited guest, her partner for the dance, will arrive. However, even after the sun sets, the awaited guest doesn't arrive, leading the maids to believe that the princess will be attending the ball alone, much to their horror. Sia, on the other hand, stays resilient and firmly believes that he'll arrive. And as she had expected, Her brother arrives just in time and greets her heartily before pecking her cheek and asking to be her escort to the ball. Being the beautiful siblings of the renowned Pescintria family, as soon as they arrive at the ball, all voices die down and all eyes fixate on them and them alone, including Via's most resentful ones. Sia notices it too, but seems unfazed by it, being well aware of just how valuable the two of them are, with her being the preliminary crown princess and her brother being a war hero. However, the history of his fame dates way back to his childhood for being a powerful duke's heir, with looks as lovely as his beautiful mother. When he was only 16, his impeccable skills at swordsmanship earned him the emperor's sword and made him the crown prince's companion. But that's not all. Not only can he wield a sword without a flaw, but his flawless wisdom is also infamous for helping their father rule the dukedom. All of this on top of him joining the army and becoming the shining and ruthless knight of their kingdom. Sia chuckles as she recalls how miserable the mistresses and noblewomen around their kingdom were when they first heard of his departure to the battlefields, and through their countless letters begged him not to go. Noticing her amusement, Rias asks her what's on her mind, and she confesses she's been wondering about the old days. As she carefully sheds a suggestive glance at the crowds, the prince seems to understand there's some reason she's attending the ball despite her broken engagement with the crown prince, and smiles much to her relief. She excuses herself to get a drink and notices Via amid the crowds, chattering with some noblewomen. After she takes a glass for herself, Sia bribes the butler to take a special drink to her nemesis, and to lie to her that a man who got infatuated with her beauty has offered it. Touched, and in hopes to show it off in front of the ladies, Via gladly takes the glass and gulps it down her throat. Sia, on the other hand, triumphantly looks back at her, internally prompting her to drink down all the premium, sweet wine, along with the medicine that she's poured into it. As she goes back to her brother's side and observes Via drinking the red wine, Rias wonders if it's simply wine that the crown princess is having. Sia reveals that it contains a medicine that their father sent to her, which is supposed to sensitize her to a lot of things. Just then, a dazed Via approaches her, making Sia wonder if her father's drug is working already. To put it to the test, she grabs the princess by the shoulders and confesses that she's the one who spread the defaming rumors about her. However, contrary to her usual self, Via does not respond, leading Sia to believe that the medicine did not work. Soon enough, though, a smirk finds its way to Via's face, and she coldly looks down on Sia, revealing that she plans on making her kneel before herself as soon as she officially becomes the crown princess. As Sia stares at the vile and wasted Via, she mourns how it's with this immature child that she was replaced. She recalls her first ball with the crown prince, the first time that she held somebody's hand, and the first time that she danced with somebody. Since the king and the queen are always the ones to have the first dance, she and the prince would always dance after them. She confesses that she doesn't mourn the dance she won't have this time, but rather the position that she has lost all thanks to a spoiled child, the spot that she tried so hard to attain. Seeing the current situation, though, she believes that Via won't be able to dance with the prince today and will fail to steal the first dance from her. Feigning ignorance, she asks the crown princess to calm down and offers her a handkerchief to wipe the sweat off her cheeks. The princess, however, doesn't take it too kindly and warns her not to treat her like some lowly wench because the consequences will be severe. Noticing the tense atmosphere around them, Sia caresses the princess's shoulder again and says that she merely wanted to calm her down since she seemed pretty drunk a moment ago. The gesture is only met with a violent scream from her as she tells Sia to drop the act she's put up. She then closes her face to hers and whispers if she knows that person too. Sia doesn't get it, and although she wants to, she discards the idea, respecting the many guests watching them. Once again, she holds Via's shoulder and asks her to take a seat so she can calm down. However, she roughly slaps her hand away, making her wince. Although Via claims that the slap was merely a brush of her hand, the crowds start whispering about why the prophecy chose such a vile person to replace the crown princess. Via hears it too, and decides to walk away for good. However, Azel then shows up and questions how she could hurt a person as kind as Princess Sia. Enraged, Via yanks her by the clothes, calling her a clingy roach. The insult only makes Azel continue to yell about how she's not suitable for being the crown princess and that the only one who is Sia. Hearing this silences Via for a moment before coaxing her to hit Azel across her face. As a catfight threatens to ensue between the two, Sia intervenes. Unfortunately, though, Via's final hit ends up on the princess's face, and she starts bleeding from the corner of her mouth, making the guests firmly condemn the violence on Via's end and wonder how she could be the child of the prophecy. Just as they start believing that it was false and forged, Via's eyes widen in horror. Using the opportunity to appear like her complete opposite, Sia offers her hand to help her, despite her injury at her hands, and Via reluctantly takes it. Despite the crown princess now standing by Sia's side, The whispers continue to grow, and the guests begin to discuss the vile rumors about her, too. Sia tries to wrap her hand around Via's arm, but the latter pulls it away roughly, only to end up stumbling upon a table set with wineglass. As the wineglasses begin to fall, Sia prepares herself to get hurt, too. However, the crown prince miraculously arrives right in time and pulls her towards him, shielding her from the danger. Just as the glasses break and the wine stains Via's dress and the floor, Sia wonders why the crown prince saved her and not his fiancée. As he glares down at her, Sia wonders what his plan is behind this sudden appearance. Via, on the other hand, wallows in her misery, repeating to herself that she cannot fall like this. Sia once again shows up to her utter annoyance and offers her help. The dampened princess, on the other hand, decides to leave and slaps away her helping hand once again. This time, however, Sia calls out to her and reprimands her for behaving inappropriately with her. The guests instantly agree with her and begin questioning her behavior and the truthfulness of the oracle, making Via pull out her hair and yell at them to stop talking. With tears in her eyes, she then turns to Sia and frustratingly questions if she wants to be punished. Sia, however, only chuckles with pride and walks up to her, wondering why she should be the one to get punished, and wonders if the oracle really is false, just as the guests are whispering. The accusation brings a horrified expression to Via's face, leading the princess to believe that there's indeed something wrong with the prophecy. Soon enough, Via is taken away by some servants in defeat, making Sia wonder why the crown prince isn't the one helping her out. Just as they stare back at each other, Rias shows up and pinches Sia's cheeks, asking her to get her wound treated as soon as the ball is over. Right then, Azel and her brother greet the princess and wonder if she is fine. Recognizing her brother, Rufella Portuba, as the crown prince's aide, Sia understands why she doesn't see too much of him around the palace. Just as they exchange greetings, she notices how he's still as kind-hearted and deeply emotional, something that gets in the way of his work and sets him apart from all the other aides who flock around the crown prince. She further compares him to Azel and notices how simple they are, both in terms of appearance and mannerisms. She then turns to Azel and caresses her face, asking her never to put herself in danger's way for her sake. Abandoning her plan to get close to the prince's aide for the time being, she asks Rufella to take his sister home for the night and treat her wounds. Once Azel leaves with her brother, other noblewomen begin approaching Sia and reprimand Via's questionable actions, wondering if the crown prince will take any action against it. One of them also notices how sad the crown prince appears and deduces that it must be because he was separated from her because of the oracle. Sia fails to understand it, and the women continue to express their assumptions, believing that the princess hasn't left the palace yet because of the prince, as they fawn over their supposedly unbreakable bond and love. Sia, however, isn't sure if she hasn't left yet because she loves him or not, and wonders if he even holds any feelings for her. She eventually discards the thoughts, reminding herself that even if he does love her, it doesn't matter since she doesn't love him anymore. Surprisingly, though, as soon as she turns around, she finds him standing right behind her with a troubled, pained expression on his face. Right before he begins talking to the princess, Rias gets in the way and greets him instead. Sia is relieved and understands that her brother did it deliberately since their relationship is pretty agreeable. Being 3 years older than the crown prince and a master of swordsmanship, Rias became his companion after moving the emperor with his impeccable skills. However, since Rias left for war, they couldn't get the chance to converse for the past many years. Just as Sia hides behind her brother's back, the crown prince expresses concern over Rias's laziness toward meeting the emperor, who is upset over this fact and has been waiting for him since morning. He promises to visit him soon and proceeds to inform him about the situation of their country, natural disasters, and politics. Just as the two of them talk, Sia looks over Rias's shoulder and notices the crown prince's firm gaze on her, understanding instantly that he means to talk to her at all costs. She decides that she'll talk to him if it's what he wants and asks Rias to politely make way for her. But as soon as she faces him, his hairstyle that used to be her favorite, and his suit that was a present from her, everything contradicts the current standing of their relationship, leading her to wonder about his true intentions and feelings for her. He then asks her permission to talk for a moment, and although she's glad he isn't commanding her, she still decides to go along with it given his power and authority. When they are alone in a corner, she asks him to make a formal request if he wants to talk to her ever again, recalling and regretting how she used to run towards him like a little child whenever he'd demand her company when they were together. She's quickly pulled out of her regrets when he pushes her against the wall and reminds her how she doesn't meet him anymore when he calls for her. He reminds her of his warnings and wonders why she behaves the way that she does. Caressing her face, he questions why she doesn't listen to him. His gesture makes her flinch, however. She pushes him away and reaffirms that she won't back down if a woman like Via insults her or misbehaves with her because she belongs to the Pescintria family. Just as she begins to leave, she tells him to take care of his fiancée instead of lecturing her if he doesn't wish to see another event like today's show. Refusing to let her walk away, the crown prince grabs hold of her hand and places a firm kiss on her knuckles, warning her to never do what she did today, again. As she sprints away, she reminds herself that it isn't like it used to be with the crown prince anymore, and that her trembling heart at the sight of him will eventually calm down with time. Hours later, as she stands alone on a balcony, she recalls how she and her brother had the first dance at today's ball in the absence of the crown prince and Princess Via. She sighs and leans on the railing, relieved that her plan for today worked perfectly. Suddenly, Asha appears out of the blue and reveals that he had to come and find her right away since there's something that she needs to know urgently. He informs her, since he was tasked to observe and attend to Princess Via after today's incident, he did as he was told to, and when he found her at her weakest, lonely and teary, she tried to take him to her bed. However, nothing happened since she was under the effect of the drug and fainted. Sia finds it uninteresting and wonders if he came up to her in the middle of the night just for this trivial information. However, Asha reveals that the actual suspicious story involves the high priest. Unfortunately, before he could lay all the details before her, somebody overhears them talking. Asha gets down on his knees in hopes to conceal himself, but the princess struggles to hide somebody bigger than herself behind her back. Still, she decides to take control of the situation and stands firmly between Asha and whoever is yet to show up before them. Luckily, it turns out to be Alfredo, who easily spots Asha and questions who he is. However, Sia tactically distracts him by caressing his face and asking if he'd like to have some tea with her soon. Although he's still hung up on the suspicious cloaked man, he gives in and leaves Sia to her privacy after promising to attend her tea party. After he leaves, Asha wonders if he can be left just like that, but Sia reassures him that he can be trusted and won't do anything that would harm her. She then asks him to go on with the story he was telling her. Meanwhile, the Pope and his subordinate arrive at the venue and wait for the princess to come out of the palace, as the Pope rejoices that the day has come when he'd finally meet her. Back at the ball hall, Sia rejoins her busy brother and shares Asha's story with him. She reveals that the priest visited Princess Via some hours ago, making him wonder why. She explains that it's possibly because she's the child of prophecy now. However, if they are clinging to each other and engaging in intimacy during their meetings, it makes the story completely different, which is exactly what Asha saw from his hiding spot in the princess's closet after the princess fainted on him. Sia explains that it must be because she was under the influence of the medicine that she wasn't aware of Asha's presence, and wonders how a high priest who isn't supposed to love or marry or have children could commit such a heinous sin. Watching her think so deeply, Rias chuckles and wonders how she grew up so quickly. He reminds her how short she was when he last saw her, making her remind him that she's now old enough to marry the crown prince. Hearing this, Rias kisses her cheeks again, a gesture of love that is shared among their family members, and questions if she was sad about the prophecy being changed all of a sudden. Taken aback, she confesses that she was, which makes him wonder if she's still sad. She takes a deep breath in and assures him that she isn't anymore, before questioning how she should treat Duke Ravella from now on, after treating him like a father for the years that she was the crown princess. Rias advises her to continue treating him like she always has, and reminds her that she's above everyone in their family after all, which is why it should be fine. Reminding her of how their mother considers her the treasure that the emperor stole from them, he earns a soft laugh from her. Sia recalls how her family has always warmly welcomed her, despite them meeting only a few times a year. Turning to Rias with a determined look on her face, she asks him to relay to their mother that the treasure of Pescintria is about to return home soon. After a while, Rias suggests that they return now that it's almost midnight. Noticing all the women eyeing him from behind in hopes to spend some time with him, Sia wonders if he would like to stay for a while longer instead, but he insists on leaving with her, breaking the hearts of the many beauties. He further informs her that he needs to talk to her about something that cannot be talked about out in the open like this, which is why he would like to escort her. As he walks her back to her residence, Rias wonders about Princess Via's relationship with the high priest, which makes Sia question his intentions for getting in bed with a woman without a status, family values, and intelligence, and wonders if he only wants to commit taboo things against her. Rias suggests that they inform the temple about this, but she rebukes the suggestion, calculating that they'll need evidence to convince the higher-ups, otherwise they'll just deny all accusations and get to walk away freely. But since they must do these deeds extremely carefully, there's a possibility that it'll take a long time for them to collect actual evidence, which is why they should find something and manipulate it to their advantage. She further speculates, judging by the princess's pale expression from before, that the oracle is fake. Rias recalls that the one who received the oracle this time around was the high priest and not the pope, who usually receives prophecies. Besides, it's already fishy how the prophecy suddenly changed when the pope changed. Keeping all of this in mind, Rias suggests an elaborate plan to kill the high priest and manipulate his death as a suicide. Furthermore, since he can, he would also manipulate a suicide note in his handwriting, revealing his relationship with Princess Via and his reasons to die. Expectedly, Sia refuses to go along with killing a priest only to be cursed by God, and asks Rias to write some letters in his handwriting for the time being. Suddenly, a servant arrives and asks Rias to tend to a disaster that has taken place in his room. Although he is reluctant to leave Sia all alone, he does decide to attend to the matter once she encourages him to, reasoning that she wants to breathe some fresh air and enjoy some alone time, as she stands facing the serene gardens of the imperial palace. Recalling the events of the banquet and enjoying the silence of the palace, a mysterious hand grabs her from behind and covers her mouth, asking her to come along with him for a moment. The person turns out to be the Pope's right-hand man, who tells her she needs to meet with an important person. The princess, however, stomps on his foot with her pencil heel and tries to run away. The man stops her by pulling on her long hair, prompting her to use the acid she has at her disposal to injure him. As he whimpers in pain, she uses his handkerchief to cover his face and takes out a hidden blade from under her gown, slashing him open. With an expression as deathly as death itself, she hovers above him with her dagger raised high, demanding to know who this important person is. Right then, a soft and gentle voice reaches her, revealing that it's the Pope that the injured priest had referred to. He asks her to drop her weapon, but she promptly refuses to. Sighing, he decides to heal the injured priest himself, using his healing spells. Witnessing this and noticing his cloaked white hair and rare blue eyes, she recognizes him instantly before he introduces himself as Asriel, the Holy Pope. He wonders if she'll remember his name if he says that he's the owner of the Holy Temple, a claim that perfectly aligns with his appearance. Convinced and yet wary, Sia refuses to give up on her weapon and demands to know why he's here. He caresses her face, feeling her sweaty hair and pale skin, and confesses that he's here to meet her. Enraged and unimpressed, she pushes his hand away and firmly questions what he wants to talk to her about. He regrets that he cannot talk to her in an open space like such, and wonders if they should move to a more private place. However, Sia demands to know his reasons for trying to kidnap her first and foremost, making the Pope smile heartily, saying that maybe it's because he wants to know more about her. He then praises her strength, admitting that he underestimated her. As she watches him walk away, Sia understands that she cannot do anything if the Pope decides to take her away with him, since she's both powerless and without authority before him. Deciding to stay calm instead, she asks him to request a formal meeting if he wants to talk to her, to which he answers that he doesn't like formal meetings and instead prefers to show up out of the blue. As he stares down at her, she feels a shiver run down her spine and compares his penetrating, judging gaze to the Crown Prince's, feeling that they are distinctively different. The Pope then closes the distance between them and wonders if she wants to be his, while skillfully releasing the dagger from her grip. He also refers to her as the child of the oracle, leading her to correct him and reveal that the prophecy changed a month ago. Smirking, he plays with the blood-stained dagger and questions her if she really believes that the prophecy has been changed. Her eyes, on the other hand, are more fixated on his skilled hands, as she wonders how a pope can be an expert at using weapons, leading her to believe in the rumors about the new pope being completely distinct from the ones before him. She then turns to him and says that she has some valuable information that he can put to good use. However, he suspects that she demands something in return, and rightfully so, because she demands to receive information just as valuable from him in exchange. Smiling, he agrees to her proposal but decides to pardon himself for tonight out of consideration for the later hours, promising to show up some other time without causing such a ruckus. Before leaving, he kisses her hand and offers her his blessings, before departing and apologizing for their misconduct for today. Back in her room, the maids clean her up and are worried to see bloodstains on her gown, wondering what has caused them. Refusing to answer any question, she demands to be left alone, which the maids instantly comply with. Now all alone, as she plops into her bed, she wonders why her cheek doesn't hurt anymore, and concludes that it must be because of the Pope's blessings. She also wonders if the priest that she impaled is doing fine, and decides to buy a newer, sharper dagger for her protection to replace the one that the Pope has taken away with himself. Just as she's rummaging through her mind, her door knocks, and a maid comes in to inform her that the Crown Prince has demanded to see her in his room. She wonders why it's so hard for him to understand that she doesn't want to do this with him anymore, but decides to meet him for the final time, only to emphasize this. On her way to the Crown Prince's room, she wonders why her path seems so long now that she's visiting him after so long. Recalling her days together with him from the past, the ones that they've spent under the palace's roof, she reminisces their memories and confesses that this palace is filled with them, so much so that wherever she looks, she sees their younger selves together. Somehow she arrives at his door and enters his room, reminiscing the many moments that they've shared inside it, his sweet words and the soft tone of his voice that he seldom used with anyone else, the gifts that he would so lovingly prepare for her, and the gestures he would only share with her. But now that all of it is gone and dead, she curtly asks him why he called for her. Turning around in his bathrobe, he tells her to sit down. She does as she's told to and repeats her question. However, the prince does not answer her. She then mentions Princess Via and wonders if he has visited her residence yet, but he still doesn't respond. As she silently sits there, wondering if he's thinking about her, the prince scoffs and walks up to her, disheartened at the stoic expression on her face, wondering why she's still the same as before, as cold and emotionless, showing him an expression that says that she doesn't care about him at all. He lifts her face by the chin and observes her closely. When she asks him to let go, he wonders why he has to let go just because she's asking him to. She warns him to let go, which he doesn't obey, saying that he doesn't want to. This enrages the princess, who tells him to go and see his new princess instead of worrying about her face. Angered at her answer, he leans in closer to her and questions if she's still going to talk about the said princess, even when it's just the two of them in the room. Looking straight at each other, with an expression tainted with frustration, he questions why she doesn't seem fazed by the fact that somebody else has taken her place, and instead plans to leave the castle. She affirms that she has to leave it since he's the one who told her to do as she pleases. In fact, now that she's received the annulment letter of their marriage, there isn't a reason left for her to stay any longer. Hearing this, the prince backs away, regretting that he ever thought something would change if he calls her and they get down to talk about this whole thing. He sighs, vulnerable as he weakly smiles at her, wondering how she can relax even when somebody else has him. She calmly answers that he never made her feel like he belonged to her. Besides, since he's the one who called off their marriage first, Sia wonders why he's so upset now. Feeling anxious about his forgetfulness, she wonders if he'll be able to run the kingdom properly once he's king, an assumption that angers him. Just as he loudly calls out her name as a warning, she reminds him that it's her name that was about to be his, that it's her name that was supposed to be his fiancé's, and it's her name that was supposed to make it to the Empire's noblest family. But he threw it all away. Stunned at her outrage, he watches her in awe, speechless and in shock, while she regrets not keeping her emotions under control. Still, she continues and tells him that she tried her hardest to become a crown princess until the end, but when the prophecy changed, all she could do was follow his decision to annul their marriage. Just as she begins to walk out of his room, he holds her by the hand and turns her towards him, wondering why she didn't once ask him to reconsider. She asks if it's his way of putting the blame on her, as he has up until now, which he denies, calling her utterly heartless. She retaliates by reminding him that it's him who is selfish, from the beginning until the very end. With tears streaming down her face and her bruised wrist, she quickly sprints out of the room as the dejected prince quietly watches her. As she walks back into her room, wondering how she'll watch him from the peasantry while the prince would spend the rest of his life with another woman, she weakly smiles to herself, swearing not to let things end up like that. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind hits her skin. When she turns towards its direction, she finds Azriel leaning against her windowsill, confessing that he has something to tell her. There's still a lot that needs to be discovered about the mysterious Pope and the reasons behind his affection for Sia. But this is how this segment of this manhwa ends. If you enjoyed this story and want us to continue, please comment down below with the name Azriel.